Portuguese, please click on the interpretation icon and select your language. Also, you may put your questions or comments in the Q&A box. I would now like to turn the floor over to our moderator, Mr. Barnaby Rook.
Good afternoon. I'd like to warmly welcome you to this meeting to shine light and resilience in the education sector. This is the West and Central Africa launch of the Comprehensive School Safety Framework, CSSF, 2022 to 2030. This event is co-hosted by the Regional West and Central Africa Education in Emergencies Working Group and GADRRRES, the Global Alliance for Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience in the Education Sector. I'm Barnaby Rook. I work as Education in Emergencies and Resilience Specialist with UNICEF's West and Central Africa Regional Office and co-lead the Regional Education in Emergencies Working Group with Leandro Salazar, my counterpart at NLC. I'm honoured to be moderating this important event for the West and Central Africa region. As was mentioned, this webinar is in English, but there's live interpretation in Portuguese, and it follows a sister webinar in French that took place yesterday at the same time. A couple of words of context. The West and Central Africa region includes 24 countries from Mauritania to Congo, highly diverse context, natural environments, and education emergency and resilience needs. Our children are highly vulnerable to the depth, breadth, and dynamic and complex nature of the risks the region faces, from conflict to climate change through natural hazards. Education systems are deeply impacted by these risks. Throughout the region, an estimated 57 million children, adolescents, and youth are out of school, and over 13,000 schools are currently closed due to insecurity. This jeopardizes the future of an entire generation, and particularly that of girls that are more likely to be out of school, subject to early marriage and pregnancy, as well as forced into negative coping strategies. Conflict throughout the region shows no sign of abating and continues to impose a high price on civilians. Millions are caught in a web of non-state armed groups, intercommunal violence and military operations, facing no choice but to flee their homes for shelter and in search of sustainable livelihoods. In the coastal countries bounding Burkina Faso, the situation continues to deteriorate due to the spillover of the Central Sahel conflict, and urgent measures are needed to reduce levels of insecurity. Multiple crises overlap and make it even more complex to respond to children's educational needs. 14 years of conflict and instability have uprooted communities, destroyed livelihoods, and eroded the socio-economic fabric of populations impacted by conflict in the Lake Chad Basin, the eastern region of DRC, while Chad and the Central African Republic are struggling to offer solutions for the massive influx of refugees from Sudan since April, compounding long-standing national crises. Over recent years, the consequences of climate change have also intensified in the region, impacting children's right to education in multiple ways through several hazards, all the way from the Sahel, prone to both drought and floods, to small island developing states that are victims of extreme weather phenomenon and the slow evolving risk of rising sea levels. Of course, neither have we forgotten the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on all children in every country, directly through school closures and indirectly by the impact on family income, access to work, health, and protection. Back to school efforts continue to establish pre-pandemic levels of education, access, and learning. Education is a fundamental right, whatever the political or security situation a country faces. Together, we must spare no effort to guarantee that it is upheld to provide our children with the best possible future. The Comprehensive School Safety Framework 2022-2030, which we're launching today in Western Central Africa, this following its global launch in 2022, offers governments a practical and effective roadmap to protect children and schools from all risks and hazards in the education sector. Can we have the next slide, please? Quickly, to run through our agenda today, we'll start with introductory remarks from UNESCO's Regional Director for Central Africa, from Yaoundé. This will be followed by an overview of the Comprehensive School Safety Framework and its 4 key pillars. We'll then have a number of statements from children, youth, government authorities, and partners and donors, before finally receiving some closing remarks from UNICEF's Regional Education Advisor for Western Central Africa on behalf of the Deputy Regional Director. Now, due to such a packed agenda, we may only have a short question and answer session, but we encourage you to please post any comments or questions in the Q&A window as we go along. Without further ado, let's welcome Paul Couster, Director of UNESCO's Regional Office for Central Africa, talking to us from Yaoundé, who will now take us into the webinar in earnest with some brief opening remarks. Paul.
Thank you, Barnaby, and thank you for setting the stage. I just want first to check if you can hear me.
I can hear you very well.
Thank you. So, dear representatives of government and partners, dear experts and colleagues joining us today, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to open this launch event to introduce the Comprehensive School Safety Framework 2022-2030. We'll call it CSSF in the West and Central Africa region. Let me first rejoice because we have the participation of many eminent speakers or very legitimate speakers. I'm speaking about the youth we are going to hear, and thank them for their leadership, their examples in advancing school safety and resilience in the education sector. It is also very important to bring champion ministries, young people, donors around the same table, as indeed we need all hands on deck to achieve the objectives of the CSSF. We convene here today, underpinned by a shared conviction and an unwavering recognition of the inalienable right of every child, a right to safety, protection, holistic development, and active participation. And such rights should find their fullest expression within our schools. As was exemplified by Barnaby, but it's worth repeating, West and Central Africa is characterized by its diverse context, diverse environment, and distinct social and political landscapes. Yet, we stand united in confronting shared challenges that imperil our educational institutions. Be they born of conflict, the vagaries of climate, or the myriad perils that threaten the well-being of our young children and their devoted educators every day. We know through the annual report published by the IDP's Internally Displacement Monitoring Center in 2022, in a little more than a decade, there were more than 11 million children under the age of 14 that were internally displaced, and their education has been severely disrupted due to conflicts and disaster in sub-Saharan Africa. And this number is going to grow, and the internally displaced are not the only one at risk there. but we have a political violence, protracted crisis, attacks by extremist groups, and extreme weather events that intensify in the region. In West and Central Africa, specifically, children from countries such as Burkina Faso, Democratic Republic of Congo, Mali, and Nigeria, and we could extend the list really, suffer severe consequences due to political unrest, compounded with disasters such as extreme weather conditions and food insecurity. The materialization of these threats can cause permanent, complex impacts on the development of children and societies. These impacts are intertwined with and exacerbated by inequalities of gender, disability, and social and economic status, leaving the most marginalized children unacceptably vulnerable. So, the updated CSSF, I would say our updated CSSF for the period of 2022 to 2030, is a concrete tool at the service of all stakeholders to strengthen their response to often challenging crises and help them plan education in a way that is risk-informed and that has to be properly funded, which is a challenge. It is an all-hazard, all-risk approach to protecting children. I think we'll have the demonstration how comprehensive is the framework in the next presentation. And we have to protect children through education, offering governments this practical framework to make urgent progress across a multitude of children's rights and the Sustainable Development Agenda. We have some experience going forward. Over the past 10 years, the Global Alliance for Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience in the education sector, I pronounce it GADRRRES, but with slightly different ways to pronounce it, has collaborated closely with different regions to advance the implementation of the CSSF. In many countries, we have national disaster management agencies, and education and environment ministries are already working together to enhance school safety at all levels. Now it is time to promote all this amazing work and progress made by countries across West and Central Africa. GADRRRES members, including UNESCO, have accompanied their government and civil society partners at country and local level to develop emergency contingency plans for education, revise school curriculum to integrate disaster risk reduction and climate resilience, and to engage children and students in awareness campaigns. Our proposal is for the launch of the CSSF to contribute to a renewed partnership through which education will be prioritized, not only because of the sector's exposure to many hazards, but also because education is a right and key to addressing the root cause of vulnerability and building resilience. So thank you again to all participants, and I wish us a very fruitful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much for joining us and underlining the complexity of the threats the region faces, the potential of the comprehensive school safety framework to address them, but also the critical conditions for that to happen. We'll now turn to Yoshikaga, education specialist from UNESCO's Regional Office for West Africa, calling in from Dakar, who's going to give us an overview of the framework and its 4 pillars. Yoshi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Barnaby, for giving me the floor. Good afternoon. We are pleased to make a brief presentation on the Comprehensive School Safety Framework 2022 and 2030. So we'll start by showing a short video that provides some highlights from the global launch of the framework that took place in 2022. As a matter of fact, this video gives us a good summary of what the framework is all about. So please watch this.
human actions have created the climate crisis. So, children from Pakistan to England and small island developing states such as mine are on the front line of the climate crisis, leaving education and basic school safety up in the air.
The program has reached 27,000 schools in Indonesia, resulting in regional policies on CSS along with guidelines and modules for the implementation.
Major strategies have been implemented individually in different Caribbean countries to improve school safety. 19 countries are signatory to the CSSI.
When we look at the goals of the Comprehensive School Safety Framework, we see 3 key goals here where we are absolutely aligned with you, and which makes us so eager to support and endorse the Comprehensive School Safety Framework.
As Save the Children, I can confirm today that we are endorsing this new framework, and we will be applying it in our work around the world and with our partners.
I think this new iteration of the CSSF comes at a very timely moment when there are more threats than ever facing education. And I really feel that its importance can't be overstated.
We're taking a strong collaboration approach across all partners, as well as a whole of society approach that's reflected in this socio-ecological model that underpins the CSSF. Really, the idea is to bring everyone together to address some of these hazards, right down from the household level up through to the systems level.
This is really a critical step, a condition, so to say, for building resilience, so that all children and all students can learn in schools where they are safe and protected.
Children's learning, particularly at a time of crisis, needs to be prioritized. Marginalized children need to be prioritized. And it's absolutely critical for each and every one of those children, but for their families, communities, and countries as a whole, that indeed we are successful.
The areas that we've really tried to focus on collectively as an alliance for the framework have been, number one, to really look at protecting learners, educators, and staff in schools and other learning spaces. To look at strengthening education protection continuity and really limiting the disruptions to learning that children have been facing, and also to promote knowledge and skills of learners and duty bearers in relation to risk reduction and resilience building.
We believe that this framework will provide countries and partners with a coherent approach to the multiple risks that face children as they try to go to school and learn.
Our Prudence Foundation fully supports and endorses the work by the Global Alliance for Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience in the Educational Sector, GADRRRES, to produce the revised Comprehensive School Safety Framework to protect children's education from all hazards and risks.
One of the major efforts we've made as an alliance is to try and ensure that there's strong alignment between the CSSF in a number of different interrelated global frameworks that are supporting safety, resilience, DRR in the education sector for children.
Countries and partners should endorse the framework to collectively escalate their ability to protect education from the ravages of war and other hazards, and ensure that students and educators can learn and teach in safety and acquire the knowledge and skills to build more resilient, just and peaceful society.
Government and community should come together in improving school facilities so that learning is accessible and pleasant for every child.
I think we should look back at the Convention of the Rights of the Child, as the aims of education hopes to help the children live peacefully and protect the environment.
So we hope that you have been able to follow this powerful video filled with very important messages. So as a way of concluding this presentation, let me refer to some main points here. The framework is made up of 4 pillars, as Barnaby said earlier. So there is the foundation pillar, which consists of enabling systems and policies that aim to protect the safety, health, and well-being of the entire school community, and that make school security a national priority. So Pillar 1 concerns the safety, accessibility, and protection with regard to school facilities. Pillar 2 concerns the preparation and management for guaranteeing school safety and the continuity of educational services, even in times of disasters and crisis. And finally, Pillar 3 is about providing education on disaster risk reduction and resilience with inclusion and gender as cross-cutting consideration. Next, please. So you might have probably heard this CSSF 2022 and 2030 embodies the all risk and all hazards approach, which is particularly relevant to the context of West and Central Africa. So you can see the comprehensiveness of the types of risks and hazard covered in the framework, ranging from natural and climate change induced ones to everyday dangers and threats. At the time of revising the framework in 2022, several elements and dimensions have been added, notably the biological and health hazards and risks following the COVID-19 pandemic, and those related to conflict and violence. Next, please. So finally, we would like to share some activities following this webinar in order to promote the CSSF in West and Central Africa. So first of all, there is this online survey to which we would like all the countries to respond. You can see the link here on the slide, and we will be also seeing the link posted in the chat. So the survey link was already sent with the invitation to the launch webinars to the countries in this region. And we must say we are really grateful that responses have been already received from 10 countries, so including Cabo Verde, Cameroon, Guinea-Bissau, and Nigeria. So thank you so much for these countries who have taken the time to fill in the survey. We would really like to encourage other countries to provide responses by 30th of September. The survey filling in is going to take about 10 minutes. And the kinds of information that are sought range from basic knowledge of school safety framework, policies and coordination mechanism in place, measures for educational continuity, safety planning, DRR resilience education, and main achievements and challenges in this area. So secondly, we would like to organize country-level launch webinars, which would allow us to go deeper into the discussions and debate that we are launching today. Thirdly, we would like to invite all partners and stakeholders to approve and commit to implementing this framework. So in order to support this, GADRRRES, the regional working group on education in emergencies, and other partners will be very happy to provide tools that will help translate the commitments into concrete actions. At the longer term, we will work on the operationalization of the CSSF and the monitoring of the implementation. So this is it from my side. Thank you for your attention. I'll give back the floor to the moderator, Barnaby.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Yoshi. Great presentation, and thanks, Camelia, for sharing the links in the chat to both the CSSF, and keep in mind that you'll be able to find the framework and supporting documents, not only in English, but also in French, Portuguese, and Spanish, among other languages, but also to the survey. And let me just underline that while respondents will be asked to reply to the survey questions from their country's perspective, you do not need to have any kind of special mandate or representation to do so. The survey is structured in such a way that anybody who is an education stakeholder at any level is very welcome to respond, and your responses will be useful and taken on board. So let me underline Yosh's encouragement for those countries that have not yet had the opportunity to do so, to access that link and spend those 10 minutes to provide us with a bit of a baseline that will enable us to support you. Okay, moving on. Let's turn to the next item on our agenda. All children and youth have a fundamental right to education. Yet, as we know, millions of children in the West and Central Africa region live with the threat of losing learning due to days of conflict, climate change, natural hazards, and other threats. Now, child and youth leaders have the dual role of being both right bearers and duty bearers. Today, we've got two such leaders, one from the Democratic Republic of the Congo and one from the Gambia, who would both like to share their views of how school safety is needed to transform education. So first of all, as you can see on your screen, we'll listen to Manuel Ntumba from the Democratic Republic of Congo and Togo. Manuel recorded a statement as IAB chair, AYAB. IAB is the African Union Youth Advisory Board on Disaster Risk Reduction.
Distinguished guests, esteemed delegates, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. My name is Manuel Ntumba. I'm currently serving as the elected chair for the Africa Youth Advisory Board on Disaster Risk Reduction under the GADRRRES unit of the African Union Commission. It's a really great opportunity. It's a great honor for me to be speaking today to address the launch in West and Central Africa of the Comprehensive School Safety Framework 2022-2030. So when I look at the key pillars of the framework, focusing on safer learning facilities, as well as safety, school safety and education continuity, and the last one focusing on risk reduction and resilience education. I would like to therefore focus my speech on four key aspects. One, youth inclusion. So considering the fact that more than 60% of the African continent population are aged less than 25 years old. So it's important to give the youth a voice, to have a youth representation whenever it comes to policies and decisions that are directly affecting the youth. Two, so the second point would be capacity building. So whenever we are providing a specific community with a toolkit, with an infrastructure, it's important to bring it with the capacity built and to make sure that they can make use of that specific tool, to make sure that the tool is available in the language, in the community language, so that they can make use of it, or that the person from the community is able to understand the use of the tool or the infrastructure to explain it to the rest of the community. The third point would focus on gender inclusion. It's really important for us to promote gender inclusion, to promote women, to promote girls whenever it comes to promoting safety in our education sectors. And the last point will focus on disability inclusion, which is really important, and many GRR stakeholders are already making a lot of progress in this, and I think it's really important that the curriculum, the toolkit and the infrastructure that would be provided in terms of this comprehensive school safety framework, those toolkits, those infrastructure should be adapted for people with disabilities to make sure they are included in the process and that they can make use of this very effectively. Thank you so much for your time and your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Manuel, for that intervention. And with a smooth transition, we're immediately going to turn to listen to Honorary Issatou Jobe from the Children's National Assembly of the Gambia. Welcome, Issatou.
I'm delighted to be chosen among thousands of children to present this position paper on the launch of the Comprehensive School Safety Program 2022-2030 for child's right resilience in the educational field. My name is Honorable Aissatou Diop, a member of the Children National Assembly of the Gambia, representing West Coast region, the largest region in the Gambia. I'm 17, a sponsored child of Child Friend, currently attending Nusra Senior Secondary School, currently in grade 10, preparing to move to grade 11 when school will open later this month. Comprehensive school safety for children means creating a harmonious school environment for us to enable quality education. Achieving this, however, requires active participation of all the key players: children, educators, caregivers, and the larger community must come together to remove barriers that impede learning, create space or condition that promotes knowledge and skill for learners, build resilience, and ultimately ensure protection of children in school, in homes, and in our communities. The establishment of the community facilitators was a great step in ensuring non-interrupted learning for children during COVID-19 pandemic. When mitigation measures lead to total lockdown in many countries, we, the children, and these facilitators live in the same geographical location. Hence, we are provided the opportunity to continue our education. Let me add here that not all children were lucky enough to benefit from this initiative, and I hope those responsible will put in place adequate measures to address this gap during future emergencies. Nonetheless, I want to thank GADRRRES for providing us this opportunity during very difficult times of COVID-19. Ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues, children, there cannot be a comprehensive school if key stakeholders fail to work together. Uniting our effort is central to achieving success. As we gathered here to launch the Comprehensive School Safety Framework, CSSF, today, children, educators, caregivers, and parents, schools, and community members must ensure that we make learning interesting and participatory for children through innovative activities. This will improve children-teacher relationship, children attendance in school, comprehension, and vocabulary. The teacher-centered teaching views children as mere recipients. It is about time that those in power, influence, and authority review our school curriculum to adjust it to an active-based one. The abolition of corporal punishment policy must be aligned with the CSSF, both at policy level and in practice. We have seen policies prohibiting corporal punishment, at the same time creating one through a but clause, which allows school heads and senior teachers to punish children. What an irony. To us, punishment is punishment, regardless of who administers it, and must be totally abolished because children cannot learn in an environment full of threats and fear. So drop your cane now. On behalf of the children of Africa, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for your unwavering support. To our teachers, thank you for building the intellectual capacity for the next generation. To our parents, caregivers, thank you for always being there for us. Child Friend, thank you for supporting me throughout. I thank you and wish you all a successful lunch.
And in particular, Aissatou, it's lovely that you were able to join us here today. Both of you have underlined, I think, some critical points in terms of ensuring that school safety is practical and works for everybody. In terms of being practical, Aissatou, you've underlined the crucial role of communities and all members of the community, including students, parents, teachers, as well as other education stakeholders, in ensuring that school safety is a reality in every dimension, including safety from violence and abuse within the school perimeter. And Manuel very eloquently underlined the need for the approach to be fully inclusive, not least taking due account of the particular needs of girls, language minorities, and children with disabilities. But I'm sorry to have cut you off there briefly, and I appreciate greatly your enthusiasm. I would like to thank you again for joining us. Madam Emily Gogora is Deputy Minister at Sierra Leone's Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education. And I hope that at this stage, the technology is on our side for you to be able to share your thoughts and experience with us. Over to you, Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Banabi. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Emily Gogora, Deputy Minister 1 of the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education. I am indeed excited to be part of this discussion to launch the comprehensive safety framework. In Sierra Leone, we have made considerable improving access to education following the rollout of a number of interventions over the past 5 years. Pivotal among them is the free quality school education. His Excellency the President in 2018, this led to an increase in quality and equitability in the education sector. Sierra Leone Medium-Term Development Plan from 2019 to 2023, titled Education for Development, believes in human capital development. This aspiration will not be achieved without the necessary safety put in our schools. Over the years, children in Sierra Leone suffered and have experienced unprecedented threats from conflicts, climate change, epidemics and pandemics, and violence. All of these have contributed to damage of homes, school structures, increased school dropouts, poor performance of students, and absenteeism of students, especially girls. It is in this light that MBSS has developed, for us, we call it Comprehensive School Safety Policy. In March 2023, we have started, which aligns with what we are discussing here today, the Comprehensive School Safety Framework. Our aims and objectives of our own comprehensive school policy: one, to provide an overarching multi-sectoral framework that will guide school safety and school and child safeguard, protecting learners and education service providers from injury, disaster, and risk resulting from violence, abuse, and harm in schools. The second is to protect education sector investments through the adoption of strategies for risk reduction and resilience planning by the school system. Of course, our policy is formulated around 3 pillars, just as you have stated before. 1, safe school facilities and learning environments, disaster risk reduction in schools, especially climate change. Then 3, protection from violence and other forms of abuse and harm in and around the school. We are confident that this policy have started have a positive impact on learners as we have started implementation for disadvantaged groups, making it an equitable investment and linking it to long-term positive impact on education outcomes. As we move along with the implementation, we find it critical, and also the achievements of the SDG, especially the SDG 4, which seeks to build the overall development of the child. It also aligns with the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and the Rights of Persons with Disability, as our schoolgirl has made mention of, as well as various forms of instruments by UNICEF. The policy also leverages on the African on the rights and welfare of the child. Above all, our comprehensive school safety policy was sent to cabinet, and it was approved and ratified by our own parliament. We are so happy that this came to the discussion table of the globe, and on behalf of the government of Sierra Leone, I want to tender our commitment to continue the implementation of the comprehensive school safety framework in the education sector. Before I end, I want to thank the Regional Education in Emergencies, the Working Group, UNESCO, UNICEF, and all others for this timely launch of the framework. We shall abide and we commit to working with you at all times, as we've had from the presentations. Thank you very much for listening.
Well, thank you very much, Madame Gobera, for sharing the experience in Sierra Leone with us, and in particular, to hear exactly how that has been validated and implemented at the national level. I must say that when you talk of protecting investment, this really rings true to me. We invest so much in education, not only facilities, but in pupils, in training teachers, and ultimately years of individuals' time devoted to learning. Now, what investment does not merit every level of protection we can give it? We're going to move on to hear from the experiences of now Cabo Verde, followed by Nigeria and Cameroon. So for Cabo Verde, we have Dr. Amadeu Cruz, Minister of Education. Minister, over to you.
Excelências, Cabo Verde está inserido numa região afetada pelas secas, mas a maior crise que nós enfrentamos nos últimos anos foi a crise da Covid. E nestas circunstâncias, não obstante estarmos numa região também da paz e da segurança, o nosso país enfrentou e venceu os desafios advenientes da Covid, implementando reformas e projetos importantes, designadamente da transição digital, da criação de condições para o ensino à distância para favorecer e integrar todas as crianças no sistema educativo. Por outro lado, enfrentamos questões da segurança alimentar e, neste sentido, temos em implementação o Programa de Alimentação Escolar, contemplando todos os alunos do ensino básico, e a nossa perspectiva é alargar para o ensino secundário. E, portanto, o nosso país está a enfrentar as crises com capacidade, com resiliência e com confiança, sempre tendo os alunos e as crianças em primeiro lugar. Muito obrigado. Excelências.
Yeah, we can really appreciate through Minister Cruz's message how school safety is not only an issue for those countries that face conflict or the most dire impacts of climate change. Even a small island state like Cabo Verde needs to invest, and the mention, for instance, of school feeding particularly highlights the multitude of different approaches that can be contextualized to achieve it. It's now a pleasure to welcome Madam Lydia Gigina, and please forgive me if I've mispronounced your name, you'll correct me in a minute, from the Federal Ministry of Education of Nigeria. Please, Madam, over to you.
Good afternoon, all. I'm Dr. Lydia Gigina, Director, Education Support Services. I wish to say what Nigeria has done since endorsing the Safe School Declaration. We know that by May 29th, Nigeria was part of the first 37 countries that endorsed the Safe School Declaration. And after signing that, on coming back to Nigeria, the Honorable Minister of Education, Malamadam, in March 2018, approved the domestication of the Safe School Declaration. And in March 2019, the Federal Executive Council of Nigeria also approved the mainstreaming of the implementation of the SSD laws and policies in Nigeria. And this enabled Nigeria to develop national policy on safety, security, and violence-free schools. I hope you're hearing me.
Yes, Dr.
Hello. I'm sorry, please. It's okay. So that helped the country were able to develop national policy on safety, security, and violence-free schools. And by August last year, the National Council on Education, which is the highest body, approved the policies, the minimum standard, and other documents. In December 2021, Federal Ministry of Education, in support of Education Emergency Working Group, UNICEF, Plan International, and other partners helped us in developing the minimum standard. And this is a practical document for basic and secondary school, both in public and private school. It's also for formal and non-formal sectors. So the minimum standard is derived from the national policy and to aid its implementation at school and community levels. I also want to let us know that in Nigeria, we have been able to develop the plan of action for safe school declaration from 2021 to 2023, which focuses on making schools safe in order to achieve the universal access and quality learning outcomes. It's not only that, the Federal Ministry of Education hosted the 4th International Conference on Safe School Declaration. That was what we call the Abuja Conference. And this was co-hosted with the African Union Commission, the government of Argentina, Norway, and Spain, as well as the Global Coalition to Protect Education from Attack. And it was the first of its kind to be hosted on the African continent. The National Safe School Response Coordination Center was also established, and that was December last year, and that's the first of its kind in Africa. And that was created after the Federal Ministry of Budget and National Planning launched the National Plan on Financing Safe School, along with other developed documents by the Federal Ministry of Education. So now we have a national plan on financing safe school. So based on that center, the Security Response Center, they're now in contact with all the schools across the country in order to prevent attacks wherever or anytime it occurs. So what the Security Response Center did was to give information as per the contact and email the website, and the letter has been sent.
You seem to have lost you. Well, this is rather unfortunate.
Committee.
Oh, great.
So these are the things Nigeria has been able to do as far as safe school declaration is concerned. And recently, we observed the 4th day, the 4th edition of the commemoration of the International Day to Protect Education from Attack. This we did last week. We were able to gather the students, organize quiz, competition, drama, songs, had Voice of Children nationwide. And the Minister for Education was there present on 8th September, because 9th September was Saturday, so we did our own on Friday. So he was there to address the occasion and made some statements on the need for schools in Nigeria to be secured. So in Nigeria, there is I would say there's a political will, and the ministers are there. Everybody is working hard to see that our schools are secured. And also, after launching the national plan, there was also a kind of survey to 18 states of the Federation to gather the information on the most at-risk schools, a kind of needs assessment. And based on that, the National Development Plan gave some, is in phases. We are now in phase 1. There are areas where the schools don't have fences, they don't have CCTV camera. Plans has been put in place that those schools also will be taken care of. There is also plans to train the SSD desk officer at grassroots level. We have 774 local government areas in Nigeria, and we have written to the permanent secretaries, and very soon, before the year runs out, education secretaries all over the local governments and the Safe School Declaration desk officers will be trained with those documents that the country have produced. I've talked about the policy, minimum standard, teacher's guide, and those plan of action, so that they will know what is expected of them, early warning signs, and all those things. So there is also a response team already formed in all the schools. The idea is that the response team in the various schools will now link up with the various response centers, about to be established in the country. But the headquarters have already been established in Abuja. So very soon, the other locations around the country will also have a similar response center. So I think in Nigeria, a lot has been done, and we're still moving on towards securing the learning environments, the community, the learners and teachers, and make sure that the schools are safe. Of course, in carrying out the advocacies, we keep on telling them that we don't need the military people to make use of our schools or carry their guns inside the school. Also, there is a plan for the new ministers that came in to carry out advocacy visits to the governors forum, where they now have to talk to the 36 governors we have in the Federation and lay much emphasis for what the federal government is doing concerning the safe school, and ask them to buy in and go ahead in their various states and carry out this particular issue that is a burning issue all over the Federation, telling them to go ahead and domesticate the policies around the Safe School Declaration, and also to ensure that our schools are safe. So please, thank you for listening. Let me just stop here for now. Thank you.
Important information. We would like to share to all of you that in matters of security and safety in schools, 3 documents guided government actions in Cameroon. The Incheon Declaration of 2015, specifically the SDG 4, the 1996 Constitution of the Republic of Cameroon, in its Article 11, Paragraph 1, that emphasizes the permanent adaptation of the education system. Also, Article 25, highlighting the adoption of science and technology in teaching. And lastly, the law of orientation And based on the aforementioned, the Ministry of Basic Education, in its nursery and primary school curricula, introduced project-based learning. It also introduced subjects such as social studies with components like peace and security, and laid emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics as a means of building entrepreneurial lifelong learning and other skills, as well as safety and security, attitudes in its youth. The Ministry of Basic Education doesn't have any document that captures the practices for now, but at least it has carried out some measures to ensure protection in schools, as well as continuity of education as a fundamental right in spite of the ongoing crisis. In that light, we have the endorsement of the Safe School Declaration in September 2018, an advocacy workshop to domesticate the Safe School Declaration and its guidelines for implementation in November 2019, the training of more than 3,500 teachers and supervisors on psychosocial support and disaster risk reduction and resilience, the elaboration of a special curriculum and guide for out-of-school children and school dropouts, the displacement of learners from zones known as red and yellow zones to green zones. And this has been of great help to vulnerable parents who find an opportunity to educate their children in these schools, which are very affordable. We also have the construction of school fences, the employment of school guards and use of detective machines in schools, the training on the rights of the child and rights of refugees, the training of actors of education on conflict management, the mitigation of violence, training on the elaboration of emergency preparedness response plans in schools, among others. These have been done, but we still continue to face challenges such as persistent crises, creating constant displacement, continuous sporadic attacks on schools, and exposure of the teaching personnel to risks. However, we continue to carry out our activities. And in doing so, we have adopted a holistic and systematic approach to emergencies in education, working with the civil society, financial and technical partners, and partner ministries to address issues of safety and security in schools, agencies, emergencies, and the internally displaced. All these are hinged on three pillars, namely protective learning environment, continuity of education, and coordination and advocacy. It is our hope that this present forum will provide us with opportunities of new means and mechanisms of improving our efforts, of increasing our efforts. These are what we've been able to do in the Ministry of Basic Education, Cameroon. And it's a delight that we are already realizing how far we can go. And so we appreciate all what we've been able to gather here. And we promise to continue to ensure children's life security and safety in school, to make them learn continuously, and to create a great learning environment for our pupils. Thank you very much for your keen attention.
Well, thank you very much for those comments on behalf of Professor Justine. I think we're running a couple of minutes late, so it's important for us to now turn to some of our key partners who are, let's say, key in furthering the school safety agenda, and who will be able to underline the importance and relevance of this framework in our region. Let's first give the floor to Mr. Jerome Marston, who is Senior Researcher at the Global Coalition to Protect Education from Attack, GCPEA.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all for inviting me to participate in this webinar. I am delighted to be here today on behalf of the Global Coalition to Protect Education from Attack. GCPEA is proud to have endorsed the Comprehensive School Safety Framework, which provides an integrated strategy for responding to all the different forms of hazards and risks that learners and educators face, recognizing that they often experience them simultaneously and need responses that can address all of them at once. One particular type of risk is the bombing and burning of schools and universities, and the killing, maiming, rape, recruitment, and abduction of students and education staff at learning institutions or along school routes, or the use of schools for military purposes, including as barracks and bases, training grounds, or detention centers. In 2022, GCPEA identified more than 3,000 of these types of attacks on education, representing a 17% increase compared to the previous year. More than 6,700 students and educators were reportedly killed, injured, abducted, arrested, or otherwise harmed in attacks on education in 2022, an increase of 20% compared to the year prior. Military use of schools also rose in 2022, with over 500 cases reported. West and Central Africa continued to be one of the regions most affected by attacks on education in 2022. In particular, that year, GCPEA collected over 200 reported incidents of attacks on education in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, over 85 reported attacks in Mali, and 120 reported attacks on schools or students and education personnel in Burkina Faso. Violence is also spilling over from the Central Sahel countries to coastal West African countries such as Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Togo. The impact of these attacks can be devastating. In addition to death and injury, attacks on education lead to higher dropout rates and the destruction of educational facilities that may deprive whole communities of quality education for months or years while rebuilding takes place. The military use of schools and universities may convert a school into a military target by opposing forces, threatening the lives of those within them. And military use can also exacerbate the risk of sexual violence or child recruitment. So, what can be done to prevent these attacks and mitigate the impact of attacks on education? States should endorse and implement the Safe Schools Declaration, a political commitment to protect students, educators, schools, and universities, launched by Norway and Argentina in 2015 and already joined by 118 countries. Most countries in the West and Central Africa region have already endorsed the declaration, demonstrating a strong commitment to better protect education in times of war. And governments in the region are also working on implementing the commitments of the declaration. Let me give a handful of quick examples, particularly given that Dr. Jijina already gave several examples from Nigeria. and the representative from the Ministry of Education in Cameroon did as well. So I'll focus on other countries. So first, Mali set up a national technical committee to oversee implementation of the declaration, as well as a national action plan, creating 9 regional technical committees to ensure a holistic approach to safe schools. And next, in Burkina Faso, a steering committee to oversee implementation of the Safe Schools Declaration was established, composed of relevant ministries, civil society organizations, as well as student representatives. And as a reminder, we've already heard great examples of SSD implementation from Cameroon and Nigeria. More needs to be done, but these are excellent first steps taken by countries in the region. GCPEA is committed to supporting these and other measures to implement the SSD and protect education. In the coming months, GCPEA will be organizing a workshop for West and Central Africa countries as part of the state-led implementation network on the Safe Schools Declaration and in cooperation with the regional EIE working group. The workshop will be an opportunity to share experiences and good practice and discuss challenges in implementing the SSD, as well as to boost regional cooperation in protecting education. Unfortunately, learners, teachers, and their families are often also dealing with pandemics, natural disasters, and climate change, which can exacerbate the conflict itself, as well as its impacts. That CSS framework, which is aligned with the Safe Schools Declaration, provides a set of practical commitments for saving lives and protecting the right to education during our conflict. The CSS framework offers guidance on building secure structures, implementing school practices for peace building and social cohesion, delivering psychosocial support, and strengthening education continuity and contingency planning. All of these are key components of implementing the Safe Schools Declaration. GCPEA is committed to advancing the Comprehensive School Safety Framework 2022 to 2030 and is proud to be a member of GADRRRES. This collaboration between the two organizations has the potential to strengthen school safety as armed conflict and other hazards are frequently interconnected, and the response to different hazards often requires similar approaches. The mandate, scope, and expertise of the two initiatives are complementary and reinforce each other. In fact, endorsing the Safe Schools Declaration and CSSF should be seen as a complementary measure for states to reinforce the protection of education. GCPEA encourages countries and partners to endorse the CSS framework to collectively build their ability to protect education from the ravages of war and other hazards, and ensure that students and educators can learn and teach in safety and acquire the knowledge and skills to build more resilient, just, and peaceful societies. Thank you. Barnaby, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Jerome, for being with us and for sharing those thoughts. I must say that you've made my job a little easier today because we're running behind time, and I wanted to spend a few minutes myself underlining what you have so perfectly illustrated, which is just how complementary and well aligned these different frameworks are. Now, you particularly, let's say, highlighted the alignment. Suleiman, we can move on to the next slide, please. You particularly well highlighted the alignment between the Safe School Declaration and the Comprehensive School Safety Framework. But I think that the Safe to Learn initiative and the NA minimum standards sort of round off that circle, ensuring that all of the dimensions of school safety are covered. So the Safe to Learn framework, which is the one we're least familiar with, is all about safety in and around schools, safety from physical, verbal, and gender-based violence and abuse. And the NA minimum standards, of course, whereas most of these frameworks aim to maintain educational continuity through prevention and preparation approaches, the NA minimum standards are more about response and recovery once school shuts down. So We have so many tools at our disposal to be able to improve school safety. As I said, I'm not going to spend any more time on this now. Let's have the pleasure at this point of welcoming Mr. Eddie Dutton, who is head of Education Cannot Wait's education team. Eddie, thanks for being with us today.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting ECW, Education Cannot Wait, to be a part of this important event. As you said, my name is Eddie Dutton, and I'm ECW's Acting Chief of Education. As you perhaps know, ECW is the global fund for education in emergencies and protracted crises. ECW was created to ensure that the right to education is protected and that education is prioritized as life-saving and seen as part of the solution when a crisis strikes, not an afterthought. As ECW, we work in some of the world's most challenging and protracted crises. The launch today is perhaps a timely reminder that there is a reason for both ECW and the Comprehensive School Safety Framework to exist. The risk to education as it is at an all-time high, just at a time when we see challenges to continue prioritizing education and ensure adequate funding is provided. ECW has endorsed the CSS framework. Our executive director, Ms. Yasmin Sharif, spoke at the global launch last year. She shared some remarks yesterday, and I'm very much delighted to be with you here today. As ECW, we very much welcome the new and updated version of the CSS framework as it pushes us all to take an all hazards, all risk approach to our work in risk management. This means we are encouraged to look at conflict, violence, disasters, the climate crisis, all together under one umbrella. Often it is the interplay between these crises that we need to better understand and respond to as well. The CSS framework is a key tool for all partners to ensure that learning environments and communities are safe for all children. In our new strategic plan, which was launched at the beginning of this year, ECW has made a commitment to support the adoption and implementation of the new CSS framework as a priority as we continue to ramp up our efforts to address the interconnectedness of the climate crisis and the education crisis. I would also like to highlight the importance of anticipatory action and preparedness. This is an area we are very interested in, and we want to see this as closely linked to the CSS as well, if not directly part of Pillar 2 of the CSS on school management and education continuity. What is particularly important to all of us, including ECW, is a recognition that impacts are felt differently due to gender, disability, social and economic inequalities, leaving the most children, marginalized children, unacceptably vulnerable. As ECW, we are very intentional about understanding the differentiated and individual needs of children affected by crises and trying to work with our partners to design responsive and transformative programs. In terms of the work ECW is supporting across the West and Central Africa region, I would like to highlight a few examples. I'm sure there are a lot of colleagues on the call who could add to this as well. As you might be aware, we have two funding windows as ECW. One is a first emergency response. When a crisis strikes, we try to provide funding right at the beginning so that education is prioritized. And we also have a medium-term, multi-year resilience program, a 3-year program that seeks to bridge the divide between humanitarian action and development initiatives. And both are very active in this region. Under the foundational pillar of the CSS, ECW is working really hard to strengthen the resilience of education systems. We work on supporting strengthening coordination, preparedness, emergency management, which are all centrally important to our work. Through a first emergency response, program in Chad, for instance, ECW partners are climate proofing classrooms to ensure they can withstand future flood events. This example aligns nicely with Pillar 1 of the CSS on safer learning facilities. In the DRC, partners are working with schools and learning facilities to undertake participatory risk assessments, safety audits where children, educators, and community members map out the risks they face and develop actionable plans to address those risks. School safety grants to support the implementation of those plans are also provided. This example aligns with Pillar 2 of the CSS on school safety management and educational continuity. We're also supporting this work in Niger as well. I should highlight that this work links in with what we are doing on gender and safety audits as well. Since 2001, all of ECW's first emergency responses and multi-year programs systematically include costed gender-based violence risk mitigation measures to support better designed education programs to keep girls and other marginalized groups of children safer and refer survivors of GBV to specialized services. Again, in DRC, ECW partners have established school gardens and are delivering environmental education to children, which is an example that aligns with Pillar 3 of CSS as well. We're also actively working on mental health and psychosocial support programs and underpinning in all of our work. These are just some of the examples of the great work that is happening across the region, and there is much, much more. But I want to take the opportunity to highlight, perhaps timely, that we will be renewing our multi-year resilience programs in Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, Chad, Nigeria over the coming months. And these will be ideal opportunities to convene partners around how the MYRPs can provide a proactive and positive model for education in each country. Finally, I'd like to highlight that we are building out our work to respond to the climate crisis. We have made commitments in our strategic plan, and we're now moving towards operationalizing those commitments. So watch out for more on this in the near future. Thank you again for inviting ECW to be a part of this important event. We look forward to collaborating with you in the future and looking forward to ensure that our programming ensures that all children, regardless of their situation, have equal access to learning opportunities. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Eddie, for that intervention. Thank you for underlining the importance of ongoing donor commitment across the nexus to finance school safety. And thank you for also, underlining your commitment to the comprehensive school safety framework. And the fact that GADRRRES is an alliance that continues to expand, to appeal, and to be ever more relevant. Finally, the third partner joining us today is UNDRR, the United Nations agency responsible for disaster risk reduction. Mr. Hugh Bainon is Deputy Chief of the Regional Office for Africa for Disaster Risk Reduction. He's based in Nairobi, and he sent us a short recorded message that we're going to listen to now.
It is my pleasure to deliver these remarks on behalf of the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. My name is Hugh Bainon, and I recently joined UNDRR's Regional Office for Africa as Deputy Chief. As you well know, West and Central Africa face some of the world's most complex challenges. Many communities live with the combined impacts of disaster events, environmental degradation, climate change, and conflict. These hazards have significant impacts on the education sector. They prevent thousands of children from attending a full year of school. Across the region, countless schools are damaged, closed, and destroyed annually due to disasters. Damage to schools by disasters lead not only to the loss of lives of children and their teachers, but also to a loss of public investment in social infrastructure and interruptions to education. We know that these have lifelong personal, social, and economic implications. The Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction is the roadmap to make communities safer and more resilient. In adopting the Sendai Framework, Member states have committed to build, retrofit, maintain infrastructure and basic services, including school facilities, so that they are resilient to local risks. UNDRR's principles for resilient infrastructure provide clear guidance to implement this. The Sendai framework also recognizes that schools must be at the forefront of a movement to bring about behavioral change and to create a culture of risk reduction. As the climate crisis escalates, decisions taken by future policymakers, engineers, business owners, community leaders, and every household must be based on an understanding of disaster risk. It is therefore clear that schools have a huge role to play in reducing disaster risk and building resilience. Schools must equip the decision makers and leaders of the future with the skills and knowledge for disaster risk reduction. This is why the Sendai framework calls from all countries to include disaster risk reduction as part of school curriculums. Education is a fundamental right. It enables young people to achieve their full potential. It reduces vulnerabilities and lays the foundation for resilient societies today and into the future. The right to education does not stop when a disaster strikes. Every educational institution, regardless of its size or location, must plan for disasters to protect assets and provide uninterrupted education in the aftermath of a disaster. For these reasons, UNDRR promotes safe, equitable, and continuous access to quality education for all. We are delighted to support and endorse the commitments within the Comprehensive Safe School Framework 2022 to 2030. Thank you very much.
Oh, we must certainly share our thanks with you, and I must say that it's extraordinary and so encouraging today to listen to our colleagues from GCPEA, from ECW, and from UNDRR, all voicing such strong levels of commitment and endorsement of this comprehensive school safety framework. We're going to turn now for our closing remarks to Madam Tomoko Shibuya, who is Regional Education Advisor at UNICEF's Western Central Africa Regional Office, and speaking on behalf of the Deputy Regional Director, Jonathan Lewis. Tomoko is going to close today with a call to action for all of us. Tomoko, over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. Okay. So dear partners, ministry officials, experts and colleagues, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of our Deputy Regional Director, I'm honored to take part in the launch of a framework that is so critical for our region, the safety and well-being of our children in school and the continuity of their education and learning. Let me first seize this opportunity to again acknowledge our valued panelists and speakers. Thank you all for your attendance, participation, commitment, and leadership in placing school safety and resilience at the center of the education sector's future. Today, education ministries, youth, and partners have all recognized the heavy lifting required to achieve the objectives of the comprehensive school safety framework in West and Central Africa. Mr. Cousteau, you have also honored the efforts of GADRRRES members, including those of UNICEF, to accompany governments and civil society in this region. Let me take a brief moment to address a few thoughts and reflections contextualizing the conversation for our region in light of recent and ongoing crises. We are all aware that the West and Central Africa region is home to some of the highest out-of-school rates in the world. 57 million children are out of school, over 1 in every 4 out-of-school children worldwide, despite the region accounting for only 13% of the world's children. Indeed, multiple long-standing conflicts are part of the cause for this. Today, over 13,000 schools in the region are closed due to attacks by non-state armed groups, occupation by armed forces, a general climate of insecurity, direct threats to the lives of pupils and school staff, and the outright fear faced by children, families, teachers, and communities. Political instability is also rife, with democratic rule having been suspended in 5 countries in recent years, creating uncertainty in terms of government governance, and the provision of social services. West and Central Africa is also a region that is hit hard by climate change, which not only further fuels conflict, but makes many schools unusable on a seasonal basis as the cycle of drought and flooding intensifies. It is estimated that the region is home to over 8.3 million internally displaced people and over 1.7 million refugees. These crises have a direct and severe impact on education. We must keep in mind that a child out of school is not only a child out of learning, but a child that is exposed to many risks, including early marriage, pregnancies for girls, and forced recruitment into armed groups for boys. This is simply unacceptable. But educational resilience also concerns children in school, as it helps to safeguard educational continuity and lead to better learning outcomes. Let's not forget that 9 in 10 children in sub-Saharan Africa are unable to read and comprehend a simple story by the age of 10. In such an unfavorable context, the comprehensive school safety framework is critical in providing direction and a framework for action to prepare for and improve learning continuity and resilience of systems. I know that many here are responding to very challenging situations in the Central Sahel that is spilling over into the 5 neighboring coastal countries of the Gulf of Guinea, around the Lake Chad Basin, in the east of DRC, and now the situation in Sudan is in turn spilling over borders, amplifying the notoriously precarious situations facing Central African Republic and Chad. As UNICEF, we are following these situations very closely, and together with partners, our teams on the ground are doing what they can to support ministries, communities, and children to access safe learning. The challenge is for us to continue to encourage all partners, governments, and others to prioritize children's learning and protecting education when already fragile countries get further struck by crisis. The need to put education at the center of that response. Our aspiration is to have critical alliances such as GADRRRES to keep up the dialogue, strengthen our collective action, and better equip us to go back and mobilize others around the following fact. Children's learning, particularly at a time of crisis, needs to be prioritized. That it is not just important for the children and the communities they are part of, but it is essential for the economic development, social cohesion, and stability of countries as a whole. So the Transforming Education Summit held last year was an excellent opportunity for UNICEF, UNESCO, the World Bank, and multiple other partners to launch a joint commitment to action on education in crisis to transform and strengthen the resilience of education. Needless to say, adopting, committing to, and embedding the comprehensive school safety framework in national plans and national action is critical here, and we will follow up on government commitments in due course. For now, as UNICEF and on behalf of GADRRRES, let me close the regional launch of the comprehensive school safety framework by thanking each one of you for committing to this renewed partnership, for committing to action to keep schools safe, to protect children's lives, learning, and well-being, to integrate risk reduction and programming for resilience in the education sector, to mitigate climate change, and to contribute to social cohesion through education. It is through solidarity and initiative that together we will make a difference for the children and schools of our region. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Very for your intervention. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, and partners, it is with deep regret at this stage that I see the clock, and we've concerted with the other hosts of the webinar and decided that the best way to deal with this situation is for us to revert to you in writing with the responses to your comments and the questions that you may have raised in the Q&A. My apologies for that, but I hope you'll all appreciate that it was very much in the interest of being able to share the country experiences and practices of Sierra Leone, Cabo Verde, Nigeria, and Cameroon, which was a little more than we'd initially planned for. So we will make sure that you find answers to your questions in the webinar report that will be shared with you all over the coming weeks. Before cutting off, I just want to thank again all of our speakers and all of you participants for your time and commitment to school safety, child rights, and resilience in the education sector. Now, as we move on to the last slide, just a reminder of what's coming next. First and foremost, let me reiterate once again, practice makes perfect, our invitation for you to complete the survey, should you not yet have done so. This will provide us, the Regional Education and Emergencies Working Group and GADRRRES, with valuable information about the status of school safety in your country, of the adoption and implementation of different frameworks, so that we can best determine how to support your efforts moving forwards. And again, this survey is open to each and every one of you. You don't need to be a ministry official to answer. Please share your views by the end of September. We will be back in touch with the recording and the information regarding the webinars. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us. All of the details should be on the screen. So most importantly, to just underline Tomokro's words, we encourage you all to work in your own organizations, whether at the regional, national, or local levels, to continue to promote comprehensive school safety. Thank you, and goodbye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. Bye.